Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and I trust you had a great weekend. We certainly had a restful one. I look forward to hosting Dennis McCorry, the CEO of On-Phone Media, at Mindspeak. That's a week on Saturday. Extremely interesting story that Dennis has got to tell us. I'll tell you a little bit about it in the run-up to the Mindspeak. It's held at the Intercontinental, as you probably know. That's next Saturday. I came across this photograph ahead of the curve, Literal Contemporary Art Museum in Rio de Janeiro by Oscar Niemeyer, and it reminded me of a presentation I'd made, Staying Ahead of the Curve. I made that presentation to Oracle. If you get a chance, have a look at it. I like this tweet from Beena Shah: girls on their way to school in Nepal. No bridge, no other way to get there. Bravest girls in the world. I'm reading Don Delillo's Falling Man at the moment, and this is on page 116. But that's why you built the towers, isn't it? Weren't the towers built as fantasies of wealth and power that would one day become fantasies of destruction? You build a thing like that so that you can see it come down. The provocation is clear. What other reason would there be to go so high? And then to double it, do it twice. It's a fantasy. So why not do it twice? You are saying, here it is. Bring it down. I'll put up an image of that book that I'm reading, Falling Man. And then I came across this. It's the deadliest wave in the world, and every year die-hard surfers flock to its shores. Located at the southwest tip of Tahiti, Teahupo'o is the subject of a local legend, and if you think you're saying it right, you've got it all wrong. Teahupo'o, pronounced Cheaupopo, or choppers in hip Aussie circles, is one of the most famous and challenging surf breaks in the world. It's a yearly fixture on the ASP World Championship Tour. In fact, brave surfers are about to kick off the 2014 Billabong Pro event. Have a look at the photographs, it's really remarkable. And on that note, I'll put up an image of the world's deadliest wave, picture by Ted Grambeau. Pepe Escobar in Asia Times is leading with first passenger airline MH370 vanished from planet Earth. Then MH370 vanished from the news cycle. First, MH17 was shot down by Putin's missile, as planet Earth was told. Then MH17 vanished from the news cycle. You know my feeling, I think the Ukrainians shot that plane down. Channel 4 News tweeted a photograph of Ferguson. I'll put that up. And then Paul Mason, who's always very interesting, is writing in The Guardian, says how peaches and propaganda are helping to shape the New World Order. Italy is back in recession and approaching deflation. Germany's economy is shrunk and France stagnates. In Britain, we have a record number of jobs but plummeting real wages. Only the US, which borrowed massively, restructured its banks and printed money on a historic scale, enjoys anything like a sustainable recovery. And even that's being sustained only by the promise that quantitative easing will go on ad infinitum. I disagree with them on that point because they've been tapering. And they're going to be at zero before the end of the year. Although its social impact has been milder than that of the 1930s, the crisis that began in 2008 has been longer and by some measures deeper. As a result, we have quietly entered the exit phase economic historians warned about, a competitive dash for safety driven by economic nationalism. The first moves are being made by proxy and center around the diplomatic conflict over Ukraine. Capital flight from Russia's real and massive $150 billion or so that has left Russia this year, combined with the complete dry-up of inward investment. Russia's agricultural trade embargo with the EU is also real. Like all disruptions to global free trade, these moves will create almost immediately new patterns that will be hard to break. For example, Greek peach farmers face ruin as their produce rots at the roadside. The Turkish government, meanwhile, has enraged Greeks by pledging to step up exports to Russia to fill the gap. And Turkish peaches, the ones I tasted in Bursa, are surely the finest in the world. Greek politicians are under pressure from the left-wing opposition party Syriza to defy the EU sanctions on Russia. In reply, they've pointed out to voters not only that the EU holds their country's debt, but also that if they recognize Russia's hold on Crimea, they might as well recognize Turkey's hold on northern Cyprus. Thus do peaches and nectarines turn into issues involving debt mountains, military no-go zones, and historic ethnic rivalries. This is what I find interesting. Even more ominous is the fragmentation of the global news agenda and with it public opinion into clear propaganda blocks. It is not only Vladimir Putin's propaganda channels that spew untruths. If you read certain magazines in the US and rely on Twitter, it is possible to believe that the Ukrainians shot down MH17, that Barack Obama ordered the poison gas attack on East Damascus last summer, that the West provoked the conflict in Ukraine in order to boost the fracking industry, and so on. When trade wars start, mirrored by conspiracy wars, the next thing to expect is the balkanization of the internet. And it is happening. Censorship, shutdowns, the arrest of bloggers and tweeters. These tactics were pioneered in Syria, exploited in Turkey and Egypt, and are being perfected in Russia. Although it seems like a separate thing, a hangover from the Cold War, or a product of an accidental revolution, the Ukraine dispute cannot be kept clear of the economic fault lines produced by the 6-year crisis. These fault lines lie at the heart of the Eurozone and between Europe and the US. And central to all of them is Germany. And I think this is a really good point he's making here. It is clear that Germany has pursued a mercantilist strategy throughout the Euro project. It has become the continent's productive powerhouse by rigging all economic relationships in its favor. When all boats are rising, nobody noticed. Now voters in Greece, Italy and Spain not only notice but also react. They look at their own jobless rates, 25% and rising, and at Germany's just 5%, and see a system stacked in favor of growth in Northern Europe and depression in the South. They observe that this Germany, so ruthless in the imposition of EU rules when it came to austerity, is now lax and unwilling in the pursuit of collective sanctions against Russia. Important point. And then saying that there is rising frustration in the US over what it sees as Europe's weakness over Russia. Since 2008, 3 streams of instability have dominated world affairs: the economic crisis, social unrest among a thwarted young generation that produced the Arab Spring, and the Occupy movements, and increased diplomatic rivalry between Russia, its proxies, and the West. Since the start of 2014, these streams have begun to veer into each other and collide. Euromaidan was a delayed echo of the social unrest wave driven by the country's economic failure. It collided with a diplomatic situation that was already fractious over Syria. It has produced, via the murder of 298 people on MH17, the first significant use of economic sanctions between developed countries since the era of globalization began. They're talking that after the release of this week's GDP figures, the debt dynamics of Europe, above all Italy, once again look ominous. Is it possible that at some point there will be a replay of summer 2011, in which a bond market crisis has to be averted by concerted global action, but this time with Italy rather than Greece and Spain needing the bailout? Such action will be all the harder in a world where trade and financial markets have become weapons of diplomatic war, in which anti-globalist parties of the right and left have significantly more support, and where the global order looks much more worn and frayed. I think he's right. I agree with this comment I found on Global Research, however. The declaration by ISIS to restore the Islamic Caliphate under their new Caliph, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is one of the silliest stories that has ever been sold to the gullible Western public. I'll put up a photograph that Al Arabiya tweeted of Syrian warplanes hammering ISIS targets in Raqqa, Syria. And then I'm going to jump to David Cameron, who made an interesting op-ed in the Telegraph, as seen through the Independent. Britain must be prepared to ally itself with Iran to combat the shared threat of Sunni Islamist extremists in Iraq and Syria who want to create a terrorist state that could extend to the shores of the Mediterranean, suggesting that it was now in the UK's national interest to put aside decades of enmity with the Shia regime in Tehran. The PM called on Iranian President Hassan Rouhani to engage with the international community in combating ISIS. Mr. Cameron wrote that Britain was in the midst of a generational struggle that would last for the rest of my political lifetime. Already ISIS controls not just thousands of mines, but thousands of square miles of territory. It makes no secret of its expansionist aims, and it boasts of its designs on Jordan and Lebanon, and right up to the Turkish border. If it succeeds, we would be facing a terrorist state on the shores of the Mediterranean and bordering a NATO member. This is a clear danger to Europe, Cameron said. Writing in the Independent on Sunday, General Sir Richard Shearer, former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe, said this unhappy saga highlights all too graphically the collective loss of nerve in matters of defense and security, increasingly the defining characteristic of the government. The consequence has been knee-jerk reactions dictated by events, whether last year's abortive attempt to launch Tomahawk missiles in Syria or last week's response to events in northern Iraq. On the 20th of October, I wrote about the two Husseins, Barack Obama and Hassan Rouhani. I was speculating about this rapprochement, and I said the recent rapprochement between President Obama and Iran's Hassan Rouhani has certainly snapped a losing sequence in US-Iran relations that goes all the way back to the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Then I was talking about anthropony, which is the study of personal names, saying I was wandering on the Herschel when I came across A. Weiwei's installation called What's in a Name, and it still resonates with me. A name is the first and final marker of individual rights, one fixed part of the ever-changing human world. A name is the most basic characteristic of our human rights. No matter how poor or how rich, all living people have a name, and it is endowed with good wishes, the expectant blessings of kindness and virtue. I said then, Hussein and Hassan are going to have to cut through a great deal of interference. In this situation, there are powerful vested interests fully invested in the status quo. I'll put up the link for A. Weiwei, which was retweeted by A. Weiwei when I tweeted it. I'll also put up an image of an installation that I found in the Herschel by A. Weiwei as well. Ian Bremer tweeted, Kim Jong-un really enjoys launching missiles, and put up a photograph. I'll put that up. And then said geopolitics and Google search. 2014 is the year of Ukraine. Have a look at the graph he posted. I'll also put up a photograph of a nurse and a doctor for tropical medicine wearing isolation suits, demonstrating their decontamination procedure as part of the Ebola treatment facility at Station 59 in Charité Hospital, Berlin. Specialized quarantine unit at Station 59 is among a handful of facilities in Germany that are capable of handling Ebola cases. The disease has so far claimed over 1,000 lives in Western Africa in recent weeks. Currency markets: the euro 133.96, dollar index 81.42, Japanese yen firmer 101.28, Swiss franc 0.9028, pound popped above 167.30, Aussie 0.9320, India rupee 60.97, South Korean won 10.1635, that's been a firmer, Rial 225.95, Egyptian pound 7.1503, and the South African rand 10.5850. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. I think corrections will be shallow. We might be in a shallow one right now. Benchmark US 10-year notes slid to 2.3%, which is the lowest since June 2013 last week. The Fed, of course, has reduced bond purchases by $10 billion for the 6th consecutive meeting last month. We're now at $25 billion. Futures traders see a greater than 70% chance the Fed will raise its benchmark interest rate to at least half of 1% by October next year. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the euro dollar last at 133.96. Refer you to a story that I found on Bloomberg. If hot thermometers actually exploded like they do in cartoons, there would be a lot of mercury to clean up in California right now. California heat this year is nothing ever seen, with records that go back to 1895. And I'll put up a chart which shows you the average year-to-date temperatures in the state from January through July for each year. And then I like this photograph of vessels anchoring in the sea as storm clouds gather over the east coast of Singapore. Commodity markets, gold back below 1300. Put up a 3-month chart. I still feel 1250 is where we're going. Crude oil, $94.83, a deeper correction than I foresaw, but I'm keeping a close eye on it. Interesting article about Nutella, and my daughters love this. Hogs hazelnuts to meet the world's insatiable craving for chocolatey goodness. There are more than 50 hazelnuts per 13-ounce jar of Nutella, and with 180 million kilograms of the chocolatey spread produced each year, that adds up to an insane number of hazelnuts. Right now, many confectioners are scrambling to secure hazelnuts. Hailstorms and frost in March damaged the crop in Turkey, the world's main growing area, causing prices to climb by as much as 60% this year. Nutella maker Ferrara Group is less reason for concern. It acquired Turkish hazelnut supplier Oytan Group in July. Interesting story. I like this photograph by Cecil Beaton of Mick Jagger, and on that note, I'll put up the link for probably my favourite Rolling Stones song, which is Miss You. Emerging markets, I wouldn't call this a bloodbath, said Alberto Bernal, head of research at Baltic Capital Markets. Prices for Argentina's 2033 notes fell 5.84 points last week to 80.17. And that was their biggest weekly drop since January 2013. This is all about Elliott Partners and the standoff with the government there. Moving to sub-Saharan Africa, I wrote the following piece. The Ebola virus is non-linear, and economic forecasting is now high beta. The World Health Organization said on Friday that the death toll from the virus in West Africa had now risen to 1,145. WHO said on its website that staff at the Ebola outbreak site see evidence that the number of reported cases and deaths vastly underestimate the magnitude of the outbreak. And I said, this is surely a given. The World Bank has written treatises on data gathering in sub-Saharan Africa, and therefore I err on the side of a massive undercount in the matter of Ebola. According to the Nobel Prize-winning biologist Joshua Lederberg, the single biggest threat to man's continued dominance on this planet is the virus. Hamid Malik, an evolutionary geneticist, has said that we have been in an evolutionary arms race with viruses for at least 100 million years. There is genetic conflict everywhere. That's evolution. It's the world's definitive game of cat and mouse. Viruses evolve. The host adapts. Proteins change. Viruses evade them. It never ends. To even think about the many million-year processes that cause that sort of evolution, it's dazzling, Malik said. Conspiracy theorists, and there are plenty on social media, refer us back to Fort Detrick, which was the center of US government chemical biological warfare research. In early 1952, CIA effected an agreement with the Army Chemical Corporation for the performance of certain research and development work by the Army Chemical Corp at the laboratory facilities of Special Operations Division, Army Biological Laboratories, Frederick, Maryland. African Ebola is one of the deadliest of known human viruses. It kills by clotting the blood of its victims, shutting off the flow of nutrients to key parts of the body, and chewing through connective tissue so that the infected literally cough their guts out. The Ebola epidemic re-emerged in Guinea in February and has since spread to Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria. As of Friday, death toll rose to 1,145. WHO said 76 new deaths had been reported in the 2 days to August 13. There have been 2,127 cases reported, It is unclear to me where the tipping point will be. Malcolm Gladwell says the tipping point is that magic moment when an idea, trend, or social behavior, read Ebola virus, crosses a threshold, tips, and spreads like wildfire. Viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics, and the new cheek-by-jowl living arrangements in so many of our cities surely present the Ebola virus with optimal conditions. Nigerian epidemiologist Chikwe Ihekweazu, who runs the website Nigeria Health Watch, told Reuters, Lagos is big, it's crowded, it would make in many ways a perfect environment for the virus to spread. In the heart of Lagos, people live on top of each other, sharing bedrooms and toilets. In densely populated communities, infection control becomes almost impossible to do well. Joanne Liu, the international president of Doctors Without Borders, said, we're not talking weeks, we're talking about months to get an upper hand on the epidemic. Modelling the economic impact of the Ebola virus is notoriously difficult. Has the virus tipped yet? Will it? Ebola is an unknown known. We know it exists, but its effects remain as yet unknown. Moody's issued a note on Thursday saying it expected critical commercial and transport disruptions to last for at least a month as a result of the Ebola outbreak. Kenya has said it will not allow passengers from Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone into the country starting this Tuesday. And then among the signs of regional economic impact, Ivory Coast will not allow any ships from Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia to enter its port at Abidjan. And I concluded by saying, therefore, economic forecasting across vast swathes of sub-Saharan Africa now carries a very high component of beta. Daily Monitor tweeted an infographic chart showing the rise of Ebola cases and deaths in West Africa. I'll put that up and still say that we might not have reached a parabolic situation yet. Mugabe is to head the African blocs in endorsement of election victory. Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe is set to win an endorsement of his fellow African leaders to head two regional bodies, an affirmation of his victory in last year's disputed elections. Mugabe will take over the rotating chairmanship of the 15-nation SADC community from Malawi leader Peter Mutharika at the start of a 2-day leaders summit in the resort town of Victoria Falls. He is also in line to lead the 54-nation African Union from 2015. He was, however, the only Southern African leader who wasn't invited to the US-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, which was hosted earlier this month. On that note, I'll put up a group photo of heads of state and the government at the 34th Ordinary SADC Summit in Victoria Falls. I learnt that President Peter Mutharika has held no mass rallies or has travelled abroad just once and spoken in public only 5 times. It's a new normal, and I wholeheartedly approve of it. Even, however, his own Democratic People's Party is perplexed by the change in style. The South African all-share ticked 0.36% higher on Friday. It's up 10.8115% in 2014. Dollar versus Rand is firmer at 10.5850. We've come back off range lows and firmed up towards the middle of the range. Egyptian pound, as it has been for months, at 7.1503. The Egyptian stock market climbed another 0.61%. It's up 39.236%, Africa's best this year, and at multi-year highs. Nigerian all-share, that's been on a losing ticket, and that's only up now 0.1209% on the year. Ghana Stock Exchange has been losing ground, lost 1.09% on Friday. It's up 3.31% this year, but of course you've been decimated on the currency. Interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal and their Frontiers segment about banks vying for a piece of Africa's mobile banking market. Well worth having a look, going through M-Pesa. Bob Collymore says the firm isn't competing against equity, but for the 95% of Kenyan transactions that are still done in cash, the market, it's massive, it's there to be had. I don't worry about equity, he said. Equity's Mr. Staley, whom I met one day, when I went to see James, interesting meeting it was too, called the complaint completely unfounded, obviously a delayed tactic. This is to do with their MVNO license and their SIM card. Dangote, whilst reporting a slight fall in profits after tax, at Dangote Cement said that they are continuing to make progress in opening new plants to serve the continent's growing need for cement, and later this year we will open our plants in Zambia, Ethiopia, Cameroon and Sierra Leone. Coming to Kenya, I'd like to thank David Williams, Tumisho MG and Claire Muthinji of CNBC Africa for taking my thoughts this morning on their morning show. Kenya shilling is been on the slide ever so gradually, however, but it's at 88.154. Key area of support for the shilling is 88.25, 88.50. We break through that, we go to 90 and 92. We've previously held this actually. The Nairobi All Share firm 0.58%, it's up 13.713% so far this year. NSE 20, which crossed 5,000 for the first time since the 29th of January on the 5th of August and has stayed above that level every day since. Closed at the highest level since January 28th. And I said we've had a market that's been driven higher by foreign investors who've been the catalyst, but all of a sudden you now have local investors who have to get in. KenGen surged 9.3%, and I said about KenGen that investors were previously rattled by the company's escalating borrowing needs. This year no longer worry that it will struggle to raise the capital to finance new plants. Recent events like the Eurobond are indicating that what looked like an enormous supersized meal the market will not be able to digest suddenly looks digestible. I'll put up a link for KenGen share price if you're interested. BAT is at 702, which is an all-time high as well. BOC Kenya reported first half earnings, revenue up 7.3%, but profit before tax down 16.1194%. Company said due to increased electricity costs and a revision of the calculation methodology for stock obsolescence allowances. I'll put up a link if you want to check any share at the stock exchange. Kenya Airways, as we know, suspended flights to Freetown, Monrovia due to Ebola. I'll put up an image of Kenyan health officials taking the temperatures of passengers arriving at the Jomo Kenyatta Airport. This photograph was by Getty Images. Story on most of the news saying that the White Widow Samantha Lewthwaite has undergone plastic surgery to evade capture. I'll put up a photograph of the selfie she took with her children, and I'll refer you back to what I wrote pretty much straight after Westgate, reflections on Westgate, Samantha Lewthwaite and the White Widow. And I said, let's jump to Westgate. As I scanned the Al-Shabaab tweets, I recalled this one that Georgina Goodwin retweeted. 14-hour standoff relayed in 1,400 rounds of bullets and 140 characters of vengeance and still ongoing. Good morning, Kenya. And I'm putting Samantha Lewthwaite as the author of these tweets. And another one, here are two of the Mujahideen inside Westgate Mall, unruffled and strolling around the mall in such sang-froid manner. And I kept thinking to myself, sang-froid, such an unusual word, means coolness of mind, calmness, composure, a kind of cold-bloodedness under pressure. I kept thinking to myself that sang-froid is a quality highly prized in the military. That's a word the daughter of a military man might know. Nisha tells me I think this is a woman, and I said that's exactly it. Another tweet says, I am titanium, referencing a David Guetta song, whose lyrics read, are practically a taunt. You shout it out, but I can't hear a word you say. I'm talking loud, not saying much. I'm criticized, but all your bullets ricochet. You shoot me down, but I get up. I'm bulletproof, nothing to lose. Fire away, ricochet. You take your aim, fire away, fire away. You shoot me down, but I won't fall. I am titanium. You shoot me down, but I won't fall. I am titanium. Cut me down, but it's you who'll have further to fall. Ghost town and haunted love, raise your voice. Sticks and stones may break my bones. I'm talking loud, not saying much. On that note, I'll put up a photograph of Westgate the day it caught fire, just nearly a year ago. NSE 20, which has closed above 5,000 for every session since August 5, previously above 5,000 January 29th, so we're at 7-month highs, rallied 23.62 points on Friday. Bulls will be encouraged by the NSE 20's price action in August. The all share just 0.8233% below a record closing high set on the 6th of August. It's been results season. If you want to check any of the results, have a look on the link for rich data. KenGen was strong, rallied 9.31%. Standard Chartered was strong as well, 1.28%. Fastest growing in terms of profitability. And overall, I think the market remains poised to go higher on a lower interest rate structure, which will support in particular well-paying dividend stocks. Once again, thank you for stopping by.